The following is a fan-based discussion, and all materials being discussed are owned by Toei and Subaraya Productions. I claim no ownership to the materials being discussed and is purely fan opinion.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another TFX First Impressions video, this time with the first 3 episodes of Ultraman Teo. As of the time of this recording, this show marks the 60th anniversary of the Ultraman franchise. While this isn't the longest ongoing franchise because it went through 2 major hiatus, it started before both Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, along with being one of the first tokusatsu franchise that I personally came into contact with as a toku fan. At least when it comes to Japanese toku. I came across Ultraman before Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, so it definitely is nice to see how far Ultraman has come over 60 years. Anyways, Ultraman Teo. As usual, the opening first. I quite like it. It's definitely different to those high energy openings. Of course, it's not going to beat Zed's opening. That's a very unfair comparison, given that Zed is by far my favorite Ultraman opening. However, I think this opening is still quite good. It's very cheerful and lighthearted, which so far definitely fits the tone of this show. I had sort of mixed opinions about the song when I first heard it, but after listening to it a few more times, I like it quite a bit. The ending is also quite unique in a good way, where unlike every other Ultraman ending, there's no lyrics in this one, and I like it. For both the opening and ending, the visuals are beautifully shot. Next is Teo's design. When this design first got revealed, I was not a big fan of it, and honestly, I'm still not a fan of it. I like that it's a blue Ultra, especially coming off of Omega, which is basically a pure red design, because we don't have a lot of blue Ultras. Before this, we only had 2 main blue Ultras, Cosmos and Zed wasn't even a pure blue Ultra. The helmet design really reminds me of Ultraman Hikari, but like with Arc. This design to me feels simplistic in a bad way. I definitely get why he looks this way, because Goto Masayuki, who designed essentially every Ultra from Zero onwards, intended to give Teo a friendly and approachable design in order to make him a relatable hero, which in this regard, he succeeded for sure. However, out of every Ultra designed by him, this is easily the worst in my opinion. Now the first 3 episodes proper. I'm surprised that they're starting this show with a 3-parter. We start on planet H12, a spaceship appears and the planet is then invaded by a bunch of space kaijus called Vierogas. They overwhelm the inhabitants of H12, and while most of the inhabitants are blue, we see a red Ultra who gets overwhelmed like 10 seconds after we see him. The planet is ultimately annihilated, and one of the survivors escapes to Earth. This survivor is Teo, our main character, and I love how his escape is filmed from his POV. On Earth, he lives under the name Mitsushi Ibuki, and he's a 3rd-year veterinary student. But it begs the question, how did he get into uni, since as an alien, he shouldn't even have a legal identity? Also, coming off of Omega, we have another Ultra with a human form. And it's interesting how we learn about Teo's backstory like straight away. Though I wouldn't be surprised if we learn more about him as the show goes along. So far, I like Ibuki a lot. He really reminds me of Shoma from Gabu, where he's a cheerful guy despite having a tragic backstory. And he's still learning to fit in on Earth, which makes sense. However, the part where he tries to pick up cow poop, because before that he met a kid who told him that they take their dog's poop home with them, it felt weird to me. Like, it makes sense, yes, but it was weird. Of course, anyone who lives in Japan or has been to Japan before, you will know that the reason why they do this with their dog's poop is to dispose of it, because there's virtually no public trash cans in Japan. As such, I can't really blame Ibuki because he didn't know, and the kid did word it a bit weirdly. I will say, this first episode does an amazing job of setting up Ibuki's character. That scene where Teo with a light over his head is standing with his back to the camera, and like everything around him blacks out until it just focuses on him. Also that moment when he's sitting alone, remembering his planet's destruction, both of these really demonstrate Ibuki's loneliness and his desire to make friends. However, a kaiju arrives on Earth, the kaiju being Vieroga, the one responsible for destroying his home. Despite being scared of it, he stands in front of it to protect the kid he met earlier, and he transforms into Teo. His transformation device is the Teo Crystar, which looks identical to his color timer. And I like how he doesn't use any other items when he transforms. Unlike, for example, in Arc, we had the cubes, and in Omega, we had the Meteos. I like how the fights are done in this show so far. Firstly, it's shot significantly better than Omega's. And secondly, with the way the fights are shot, they do a great job of showing us an Ultra who not only dislikes fighting, but is also scared of fighting. Unlike basically every post-Zero main Ultra before him, he doesn't have form changes. Instead, his body glows whenever he uses an ability, like when he uses his beam finisher, he glows yellow. Also, this is one of the few Ultras who can't handle his own finisher. He fires using one arm, and he couldn't handle the recoil until he used both arms. After that, we see him suffering damage from using his own finisher until he turns back. If you didn't notice, this show has similarities to Leo, where he's an Ultra who lost his home, and his first opponent is the one who destroyed his home, although Leo started off as a much better fighter compared to Teo. In the first 2 episodes, we meet the other important characters, the Astronomy Club consisting of Kazama Emma, who is the club president, Izumi Kana, Hyura Rintaro, and Tomobechi Wataru. They study at the same university as Ibuki. Professor Minobe Junpei, who is in the university's Department of Animal Science and Biotechnology, Shiga Kyoko, who is an agent of the UTTF, which stands for the Unidentified Threat Task Force, and her job is to investigate the kaiju appearances. It's not just human characters we meet, by the way. We also meet a little kaiju named Pucci, who has a giant form that will show up at some point later on. I like Pucci quite a bit. They have a cute look, and the sounds they make are also cute. I also like how the first 3 episodes set up personality traits for the Astronomy Club members. Like Emma is upbeat and likes to give the kaiju nicknames. Kana likes to be alone and do her own things rather than interacting with others. Rintaro is very standoffish, and Wataru gives off older brother vibes, which makes sense considering that he's the oldest member. I quite like these guys. We will definitely learn more about them as the show goes on, especially Wataru and Rintaro. The scene where Emma first sees Pucci is hilarious. Ibuki first hides Pucci in the club room, and the next day he notices that the bandages around their leg have been rewrapped, which sets this whole scene up. They all try to hide Pucci from her, which does not work, and the part where we see how each of them found Pucci was very funny. However, a second Viroga appears, and we know it's a different one because it has an extra horn. Before Teo can use his finisher to kill it, another kaiju, Sodera, appears. This leads into episode 3 where Teo loses, which along with the fact that he's fighting 2 kaijus at the same time, I wasn't expecting it to happen this early. Anyways, after Teo disappears, Sodera devours Viroga, which it also ate the corpse of the Viroga killed in episode 1. It then flies towards the university for its next meal, which obviously is Pucci. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if the Astronomy Club finds out who Ibuki is relatively early on, as he almost gave his identity away in this episode. From Blazer, where nobody found out, then Arc, where they find out in the finale, and then Omega, where they find out from the start. At least Kosei does. Ayumu and Professor Sayuki don't find out until around the middle of the show. They may find out about Ibuki being Teo before the second half starts. I don't know, I guess we'll see. Just when Pucci is about to be eaten, Teo saves Pucci and fights Sodera, who can turn invisible. There's this funny scene where Teo gets shot in the back with a beam and he starts flailing like crazy. That was hilarious. It's also weird how the kaiju starts spinning like a top after getting hit by Teo's beam. And speaking of spinning, Teo spins while flying away. The Ultra flying away after a fight is normal. It has been for essentially since the beginning. But the spinning part is not normal. I haven't talked much about Professor Minobe, but he has this scene near the end of this episode where he talks while looking at a T-Rex action figure. That was great. So far, these first 3 episodes have been great. I like every character we've been introduced to so far. The acting has been great, and I also really like the university setting that this show takes place in, because we don't get a lot of those in Ultraman. This show just gives a different vibe compared to what came before it. Given that this show is starting with a 3-parter, it's possible that the entire show will be made up of a bunch of multi-parters. No other Ultra show has done that before, and it may turn out good depending on the execution. That just about wraps up my thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Ultraman Teo. I'm really liking this show so far. It's unique in quite a few ways. I'm excited for the rest of this show, of course, when it comes out. Let me know in the comments section below how you think of Ultraman Teo so far. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, share, and follow me on all my socials. That's it for today, folks, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.